The dry Dallas heat hit me like a physical blow the moment the airport doors slid open. After 8 years away, working overseas contracts, sending every spare dollar home, I told myself this was the best day I'd had in a decade. I was wrong. My name is Robert Callahan, and I'm 68 years old. For 8 long years, I'd been in London, then Frankfurt, then Singapore, chasing contracts, chasing money, all of it for my daughter, Claire, and my grandson, Noah. I believed they were safe, cared for, thriving. I had to believe it. The alternative was a darkness I wasn't prepared to face. I didn't call ahead. I didn't want a staged welcome. I wanted to see Claire's real face, unguarded, when she opened the door. I'd pictured it countless times. Claire in the kitchen, Noah at the table, the scent of a home-cooked meal. I climbed into a taxi, gave the driver Claire's address in Oak Lawn, and leaned back, watching Dallas scroll past. Glass towers, familiar highways, that vast, flat blue sky. My chest felt full, brimming with a hope I hadn't known in years. "First time back in a while?" the driver asked, catching my eye in the rearview mirror. "8 years," I said, and he let out a low whistle. "My daughter and my grandson. He's 10 now." I pulled out my phone, showing him a photo of Noah at 7, a gap-toothed grin. "Haven't seen him since he was this size." The driver smiled. "He's going to flip out when he sees you." "That's the plan," I said, my own smile feeling a little shaky. We hit a red light under an old overpass, the concrete stained dark with years of rain. I was scrolling through old photos of Claire, trying to decide which one to show Noah first, when something outside the window snagged my attention. A woman sat on a flattened cardboard box, her shoulders hunched, wearing a coat several sizes too big, the faded olive green of a thrift store find. Beside her, a plastic bag held her meager belongings. She was tearing a cheap, plastic-wrapped sandwich in half, giving the larger portion to a boy beside her. The boy, maybe 10 or 11, had dark hair, a worn backpack, and a shoe with a flapping sole. He took the sandwich without a word. Not out of rudeness, I thought, but from a habit born of a life where gratitude felt like a luxury. Then the woman looked up. My breath caught. "Pull over," I choked out. The driver blinked. "Sir, pull over right now. Right here." My voice was sharp, urgent, cutting across 2 lanes without another question. I was out of the car before it fully stopped, a horn blaring behind me. I didn't care. My legs moved on their own, pulling me forward. The woman had looked back down, hunching her shoulders again, trying to disappear into the wall. "Claire," my voice broke on her name. The boy looked up first, his eyes dark and wary, assessing me with the quick, practiced gaze of a child who'd learned to read situations. Then the woman raised her head, and the world stopped. She was so thin, her cheekbones stark against her skin. Her hair was pulled back with a rubber band, a small tear near the collar of her sweater. But it was her. Every line, every feature, my daughter, the girl I'd held the day she was born, walked to school, hugged goodbye at the airport with a promise that I'd be back. Claire stared, her lips parting. Her body went rigid, as if frozen. The half sandwich slipped from her hand to her lap, unnoticed. "Dad," her voice was barely a whisper. That's not." She scrambled to her feet, nearly knocking the cardboard over. The boy grabbed her arm, steadying her. "Claire, it's me." My voice cracked wide open. I took a step forward, hands out, every instinct screaming to close the distance. "It's Dad. I'm here. I'm real." She stumbled backward, one hand pressed flat against her chest as if to hold her heart in place. Her eyes were enormous, filled with a look I'd never seen. Not fear, not grief, but something worse. Something that looked like the moment a person's entire reality shatters. "You're supposed to be dead," she whispered. I stopped. The words hit me below the ribs, a physical blow. I stood on the sidewalk in the Dallas heat, my carry-on still rolling behind me, looking at my homeless daughter and my grandson, and she was staring at me like I was a ghost. "What?" My voice was raw. "Claire, what did you just say?" Her mouth opened, closed. Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head, pressing both hands over her mouth, her shoulders shaking. "Oh, you died!" she choked out, muffled behind her palms. "Diana called me. She said you had a heart attack." "She said you were gone." Her voice broke into pieces. "She had papers, Dad. She had a death certificate. I saw it. I held it in my hands. The boy, my grandson, though I hadn't been able to say it aloud yet, took a small step, positioning himself slightly in front of his mother. Protective, automatic. The gesture of a 10-year-old boy who'd been looking out for his mom for far too long. I looked at him. He looked back, his eyes steady. "Noah," Claire managed, her voice wrecked and wet. "Noah, this is—" She stopped, pressed her lips together. "This is your grandfather." Noah didn't move for a long moment. He looked at me, really looked, the way children do when they're trying to understand something too big for them. 5 days later, I sat across from Claire in a small, sterile room at the shelter. She was still thin, still tired, but she sat straighter when I walked in. A small act of defiance that spoke volumes. My daughter, still standing, even after everything. I didn't waste time. "I want to know what the last year looked like," I said. "Before the shelter, before the bridge. Tell me what you actually went through." Claire curled her hands tighter around her mug, her jaw working as she searched for a starting point. "You sure you want to hear all of it?" she asked quietly. "Every word." She took a breath and began. The debts had started about 3 years ago. Letters from collection agencies, statements for accounts she didn't recognize, calls from lenders she'd never heard of. At first, she thought it was a mistake, a clerical error. She tried disputing them, explaining she hadn't opened those accounts. But they all had her social security number, her name, her date of birth. The signatures on the applications looked close enough to hers that even she second-guessed herself. "I didn't have money to hire a lawyer," she said, her voice flat, matter of fact. The kind of voice people get when they've accepted a wound they can't afford to keep reopening. And there was no one to help me figure out what was happening. Ethan's family made it very clear that the financial problems were my problem. She stopped, her fingers whitening around the mug. "Ethan, he just said I needed to handle it." "So you handled it," I said. "I handled it." She looked at the table. "I sold the car first, the Honda, got $4,000 for it, paid off the smallest account. I thought maybe that would stop the bleeding." Her voice dropped. It didn't. More letters the next month, different accounts, different lenders. She kept going, and with every sentence, the vice around my chest tightened. She sold the dining table, the bookshelves, the television, the small chest of drawers, kitchen appliances she didn't strictly need. She sold the necklace Margaret, my late wife, had given her on her 16th birthday, a small gold chain with a crescent moon pendant. She told the pawn shop it was just jewelry she didn't wear anymore. "That's not true," she said, her voice cracking for the first time. "I wore it every single day until I had to sell it." I kept touching my collarbone for weeks afterward, looking for it. My eyes burned. I pressed my fingers against them briefly, breathing. She continued. "The sapphire bracelet I'd bought her for her 30th birthday. Margaret's pearl earrings, the ones she'd worn to Claire's college graduation. A small diamond ring that had belonged to Margaret's own mother." "Mom's ring?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. I held on to it the longest," Claire said, tears now running steadily down her face, past the point of fighting them. "Every time I thought about selling it, I put it back in the box. But then there was a month where Noah needed new shoes for school, and I was $300 short on the power bill, and I just—" She pressed her lips together. "I told myself Mom would have understood." "She would have," I said. "She absolutely would have." "I know." Claire wiped her face with the back of her hand. "But knowing that didn't make it stop hurting." She told me about the last item she sold. The set of Lego I'd bought Noah the Christmas before I left for London. He'd been 2 years old. She'd kept it in the original box for years, saving it for when he was old enough. When the time came, she finally gave it to him. 6 months later, she sold it to a woman at a yard sale for $12 because she needed to eat that week. "He didn't cry," Claire said, her voice breaking completely. "He just asked me if we were going to be okay, and I said yes, and he went to his room, and I stood in the kitchen and cried until I couldn't stand up anymore." She looked at me, her eyes red, her jaw set in pure steel, and then I washed my face and made dinner. I reached across the table and took both her hands in mine. They were cold. I held them, not saying anything, because there were no words in the English language sufficient for that moment, and I had the good sense not to try. After a moment, I squeezed her hands. When there was nothing left to sell, I said carefully, "What did Ethan's family do?" Claire's expression shifted, not to pain, but to something more complicated. She pulled one hand back and picked up her tea again. "They told us to go," she said. "Just like that?" "Just like that." She turned the mug in her hands. "They changed the locks while we were out. Our things were in garbage bags on the porch." The rage that moved through me was so absolute, so clean, it almost felt like peace. I breathed through it. "Ethan let that happen," I said. It was not a question. Claire looked at me, really looked, the way she hadn't quite let herself do since I came back. I saw something shift behind her eyes. Not grief, something more specific. Something she had been deciding whether to tell me for 5 days. "Dad," she said slowly, "there's something about Ethan I've never told you. Something I didn't fully understand myself until recently." She turned the mug in her hands. "When the debts first started showing up, the collection letters, the accounts I didn't recognize, I went to Ethan. I showed him everything. I asked him to help me figure out." The courtroom was hushed, the air thick with tension. Diana, my sister, sat on the stand, composed, almost serene. A lifetime of practiced performance is a powerful thing. Then Brandon Marsh, Claire's lawyer, stood up. Unhurried, he walked Diana through 14 wire transfers, each structured just below the federal $10,000 reporting threshold. She claimed she didn't recall the specific amounts. Marsh placed Exhibit 7 in front of her and asked her to read them aloud. She did. Not one exceeded $9,900. "Mrs. Callahan," Marsh said quietly, "structuring transactions to avoid federal reporting requirements is a federal crime under 31 U.S.C. Section 5324. Were you aware of that?" Fitch, Diana's lawyer, objected. Judge Hale overruled. Diana's composure didn't shatter. It calcified, went from polished to stone rigid. I watched the jury watching her, and I knew. The jury deliberated 14 hours over 2 days. At 11:47, Judge Patricia Hale read the verdict. Claire's hand was in mine. Noah pressed warm and close against my other side. Behind us, I heard Arthur's pen click once against his notepad and go still. On the charge of wire fraud, guilty. Identity theft, guilty. Structuring financial transactions, guilty. Forgery of a legal instrument, guilty. Each count landed like a stone dropped into still water. By the fourth, Claire was shaking so hard the bench trembled beneath us. She pressed her free hand flat against her mouth, fighting back something enormous. Noah leaned to my ear. "Grandpa, does that mean she goes to jail?" "Yes, Bud," I whispered. "It does." He buried his face against Claire's side and held on. She broke then, completely, the way a dam goes all at once. A raw, helpless sound muffled against the top of his head. I pulled them both close, my jaw aching, my eyes burning until the courtroom blurred entirely, and I let the tears come. There was no reason left to hold them back. Arthur's hand landed on my shoulder. "Robert." His voice was thick in a way I'd never heard across 40 years of friendship. "It's done." 3 weeks later, on December 12th, Arthur handed Claire the court order restoring title to 1147 Birchwood Lane, the fraudulent debt of $342,000 void. Civil judgment of $1.2 million entered in Claire's favor. She read it twice, set it down, and quietly cried into her palms. "Hey," I touched her wrist. "Let's go see the house." Noah was already in the corridor, eating an apple, backpack on. "Finally," he said. "I've been waiting forever." The drive took 20 minutes. I kept one hand on the wheel and held my palm open across the center console until Claire put her hand in mine. We didn't need words. Not after 8 years, 47 letters of fake grief, and 14 months under a bridge. We pulled into the driveway on Birchwood Lane. Claire picked up the key Arthur had left on the doorstep, then looked back at me. "Together," she said. "Together." The lock turned with a clean, solid click. the sound of something that had been closed far too long, and we walked inside. They say God doesn't give you more than you can carry. But, I'll be honest with you, there were nights I wasn't so sure. I carried 8 years of absence like a stone in my chest, telling myself the work was for my family, when the truth was simpler and harder than that. I wasn't there, and the people I loved paid the price for it. So, if you take anything from this old man's story, let it be this. Don't be like me. Don't wait until your daughter is sleeping under a bridge to remember that no business deal, no overseas contract, no amount of money is worth the years you'll never get back. Trust carefully, love loudly. Stay. I've learned that silence isn't peace. It's just postponed pain. I've learned that the people who hurt your family rarely look like villains from the outside. And I've learned that a 10-year-old boy holding his mother's hand in the dark is worth more than every dollar I ever earned. This has been one man's family story. Messy, broken, and by some grace I still don't fully understand. Put back together. If it sounded like your story, or your neighbor's, or someone you love, then it did exactly what I hoped it would. These are the kind of grandpa stories I never wanted to have. But I'm grateful I lived to tell them.